Her tiny lungs screamed for help as garbage bags pressed against her fragile body, the Arizona sun burning her skin while people walked past the dump site, deaf to her desperate cries. Only Miguel Yazzie, an Apache man collecting aluminum cans, heard the fading whimpers of the 3-month-old baby discarded for having folded ears, a sound that would forever change both their lives. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Among mountains of garbage and the suffocating odor of human decay, a fragile cry echoed like a lost note. So faint it almost blended with the dry Arizona wind, as desperate as the last plea of a wounded bird. The June sun punished the municipal landfill on the outskirts of Phoenix, transforming plastics into furnaces and glass into incandescent mirrors. Among black disposal bags and boxes undone by moisture, a small blue bundle trembled. Miguel Yazzie walked with firm steps between the mounds of trash, his worn boots occasionally sinking into puddles of indefinable liquid. His face, marked by deep wrinkles like ravines in the desert, remained impassive under the bandana, protecting his forehead from the scalding sweat. At 47, the Apache man knew this landscape well. For 6 years, he had supplemented his income as a construction worker by collecting aluminum cans at the landfill. It was thankless work, but it paid the extra bills and allowed him to help his elderly mother on the reservation. That's when the sound cut through the pestilent atmosphere. A moan so weak it could be mistaken for wind through the debris, but Miguel's ears, trained by decades of hunting, didn't ignore it. He stopped, the bag of cans tinkling in his left hand. He turned his head slowly, like a wolf scenting distant prey. "Who's there?" he asked quietly, knowing it was unlikely he'd receive an answer. The cry came again, weaker this time. Miguel abandoned his cans and followed the sound, circling a small mountain of rubble. That's when he saw it. Between 2 black garbage bags, a faded blue blanket moved almost imperceptibly. His heart raced. In 17 years of sifting through garbage, he had never found anything like this. With the care of someone disarming a trap, he pushed aside the garbage bags and touched the fabric. The crying immediately intensified, a desperate, hungry, exhausted sound. Miguel pulled back the blanket and his eyes widened with shock. A baby, no more than a few months old, with skin reddened by heat and dried lips, weakly squirming. "Dear God," he whispered, unable to believe what he was seeing. The child was dehydrated, her tiny body trembling and her breathing as rapid as a wounded bird's. Without hesitation, Miguel removed his fringed leather jacket, a family relic his grandfather had given him, and wrapped the child in it. That's when he noticed the baby's ears were different, folded in an unusual way, like small shells closed upon themselves. "Is this why they left you here, little one?" he murmured, anger rising in his chest like a desert storm. "Because of your ears?" The baby opened her eyes, dark and bright despite the dehydration, and seemed to stare at him with an intensity that pierced Miguel's hardened soul. In that moment, something changed within him. A silent decision was made, as firm as the sacred mountains of his land. "You're going to be okay," he promised, lifting the small bundle against his chest. "I'll take you somewhere safe." With the baby firmly cradled in his arms, Miguel began running up the garbage slope, ignoring the suffocating heat and the nauseating smell. His old truck was parked 500 yards away, and every second seemed an eternity as the baby's fragile heart fought to keep beating. "Hold on, little warrior," he whispered, instinctively using the Apache term his mother had called him in childhood. "You are strong, stronger than those who abandoned you." Reaching his time-worn truck, Miguel carefully placed the baby on the passenger seat. He started the engine with trembling hands, leaving behind his bag of aluminum cans, his extra income for the day. Some things were more important. St. Joseph's Hospital was 20 minutes away. As he drove, Miguel alternated glances between the road and the small bundle. The baby had stopped crying, which was even more alarming. Her little eyes were now half closed, struggling to stay open. "Stay with me," Miguel pleaded, accelerating beyond the speed limit. "Just a few more minutes." The emergency entrance of St. Joseph's Hospital gleamed under fluorescent lights as Miguel's truck screeched to a halt in the ambulance bay. He didn't care about parking restrictions or security guards waving him away. The bundle in his arms was motionless now, the tiny chest barely rising with each shallow breath. "Help!" he shouted, bursting through the sliding doors, his voice cracking with desperation. "I found a baby at the landfill." The word baby triggered an immediate response. A nurse with short grey hair rushed forward, her experienced hands already reaching for the bundle. Her name tag read, Eleanor Winters, RN. "How long has she been like this?" she asked, her voice calm, but her movements swift as she unwrapped Miguel's jacket. "I don't know. I found her maybe 30 minutes ago," Miguel answered, reluctantly releasing the child. "She was hidden among garbage bags." The nurse's professional demeanor faltered for just a moment as she registered what she was seeing. "Someone left her at the dump?" Her eyes hardened, then she called over her shoulder, "I need a pediatric team in Trauma 1 now." A flurry of activity erupted. The baby disappeared behind swinging doors, surrounded by medical professionals, speaking in terse, urgent tones. Miguel stood frozen in the hallway, his empty arms still curved as if holding the child. His jacket lay discarded on a nearby chair, smudged with dirt and bearing the faint imprint of the baby's tiny body. Sir, I need to ask you some questions." A young security guard approached cautiously, clipboard in hand. Behind him, a police officer was already on his radio, reporting the situation. Miguel knew how this looked. A rough-looking Native American man bringing in an abandoned infant. The suspicion in their eyes was familiar to him. "I didn't hurt her," he said immediately, his voice low but firm. "I collect cans at the landfill. I heard her crying." The police officer, Officer Jenkins according to his badge, stepped forward. "Nobody's accusing you of anything, sir. We just need to understand what happened." His tone was professional but not unkind. "Can I see some identification?" Miguel handed over his driver's license, his eyes never leaving the trauma room doors. "Will she live?" he asked, addressing no one in particular. Before anyone could answer, the doors swung open and Eleanor emerged, moving briskly toward them. "We've stabilized her for now. She's severely dehydrated and has mild sunburn, but no major injuries. Dr. Patel thinks she's approximately 3 months old." She paused, looking directly at Miguel. "You found her just in time." Relief washed over Miguel like cool rain. "Her ears," he said softly. "They're different." Eleanor nodded. "Yes, she has a congenital condition called microtia, malformed outer ears. It's not life-threatening, but..." She trailed off, the unspoken implication hanging in the air. But it might explain why someone abandoned her. A heaviness settled in Miguel's chest. He knew about rejection based on physical differences. His grandfather had been born with 6 fingers on one hand, a sign of power among their people, but a source of mockery and fear from outsiders. Officer Jenkins was writing notes. "I'll need to file a report. Child Protective Services will be notified." He glanced up at Miguel. "Where exactly did you find her?" Miguel described the location in detail, anger seeping into his voice. "They left her to die, surrounded by filth and garbage because of her ears." "What kind of monsters?" He stopped himself, aware of how his rising voice was drawing attention. Eleanor placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Would you like to see her again? She's being moved to the NICU." Miguel nodded, suddenly unable to speak, past the knot in his throat. As they walked toward the elevator, a social worker with curly hair and tired eyes joined them. introducing herself as Diane Matthews. "We'll try to locate her family," she explained, her tone suggesting she'd seen too many similar cases. "If we can't, she'll enter the foster system." The elevator doors closed with a soft ping. Miguel stood silently in the corner, his weathered hands flexing and unflexing at his sides. In the cramped space, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the polished metal doors, a man who looked much older than his years, with eyes that had seen too much hardship. And yet, something else had awakened in those eyes, something that had been dormant for a very long time. "What will happen to her ears?" he asked suddenly. Eleanor and Diane exchanged glances. "Surgery can help eventually," Eleanor replied, "but it's expensive, complicated, and in the system." She didn't finish the sentence. Miguel understood what remained unsaid. In the system, a native child with physical differences would face challenges beyond imagination. The elevator doors opened to the NICU floor, and with them, a decision began forming in Miguel's heart. Behind the glass walls of the NICU, the baby looked impossibly small. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped steadily, monitoring her fragile life. Miguel pressed his palm against the cool surface, a barrier between him and the child who had inexplicably captured his heart in the space of a few hours. "We haven't given her a name yet," Eleanor said softly, standing beside him. "The hospital uses Baby Doe for abandoned infants." Miguel's jaw tightened. Baby Doe, as if she were nothing more than an unclaimed package. "Does she need to be behind glass?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Just until we're sure she's stable and free from infection," Eleanor explained. "Would you like to touch her? You'll need to scrub in." 20 minutes later, Miguel sat beside the incubator, his hand reaching through a small circular opening. His large, calloused finger looked alien next to the baby's miniature ones. Yet when she reflexively grasped it, the connection felt ancient and powerful, like roots reaching deep into the earth. "I've called my mother about her," Miguel confessed, not taking his eyes off the sleeping infant. "She said our people believe children like this are blessed by the mountain spirits, that their ears are folded because they've been listening to sacred songs before birth." Eleanor smiled, not dismissively, but with genuine appreciation. "That's beautiful. Much better than the clinical explanation." Miguel stayed until visiting hours ended, reluctantly rising only when a nurse gently reminded him of the time. Outside, the Arizona night had fallen, stars piercing the desert sky with unusual clarity. He sat in his truck for a long time, not starting the engine, his mind racing with thoughts that would have seemed impossible that morning. The following day, Miguel called in sick to his construction job for the first time in years. Instead, he drove straight to the hospital, stopping only to purchase a small, soft blanket adorned with turtles from a gift shop on the ground floor. Dr. Patel, a pediatric specialist with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, intercepted him on his way to the NICU. "Mr. Yazzie, I was hoping to speak with you. The baby is doing remarkably well. We expect she can leave the NICU tomorrow." "That's good news," Miguel replied, his relief evident. "Has anyone come looking for her?" Dr. Patel's expression sobered. "No. Police found what they believe to be her abandonment site at the landfill. Evidence suggests she was there for approximately 2 days. 2 days. The words hit Miguel like physical blows. 2 days in scorching heat, surrounded by waste, fighting for each breath. The officers found a soiled diaper and an empty formula container nearby, Dr. Patel continued gently. Someone fed her, changed her, then left her there. Miguel's hands clenched into fists. Because of her ears. Perhaps. Microtia can be shocking to unprepared parents, especially when combined with the stress of a newborn. But abandonment. Dr. Patel shook his head, professional neutrality briefly giving way to disgust. As they approached the NICU, Diane Matthews emerged from an office, folders clutched to her chest. Seeing Miguel, she altered her course to intercept them. "Mr. Yazzie, I was just coming to find you. Can we talk for a moment?" In a small conference room, Diane laid out the reality of the situation. "We've begun the process of making her a ward of the state. Given her medical needs, we'll be looking for specialized foster placement." "And if no one wants her?" Miguel asked, the question emerging sharper than intended. Diane didn't flinch. "Children with special needs can wait longer for placement, yes, but eventually, I'll take her," Miguel interrupted. The words escaped before he had fully formed the thought, yet once spoken, they settled into his bones with unmistakable rightness. Diane and Dr. Patel exchanged glances. "Mr. Yazzie, your concern is admirable," Diane began carefully. "But adoption is a complex process. There are home studies, background checks, financial evaluations. I have a home. I work full-time. I raised my nephew after my sister died," Miguel replied, leaning forward. "And I know what it means to be different in a world that values sameness." Dr. Patel studied him with renewed interest. "What does your family think about this?" Miguel thought of his mother, her voice firm on the phone. "Bring her home, son. Children choose their parents as much as we choose them." "They're waiting to meet her," he answered simply. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and heavy with promise. The wheels of bureaucracy turned with agonizing slowness. 3 days after Miguel's declaration, the baby remained in the hospital while he navigated a labyrinth of paperwork, interviews, and preliminary evaluations. He divided his time between the construction site, where his boss had reluctantly agreed to flexible hours, and the hospital, where nurses had begun saving the most comfortable chair for his evening visits. "You need to name her," Eleanor insisted one evening, watching Miguel gently hold the bottle as the baby eagerly drank her formula. "It's not right for her to keep being baby dough on all these forms." Miguel looked down at the infant's face. Her skin had lost the reddish tint of dehydration, replaced by a healthy copper glow. Her eyes, alert and dark, followed his movements with remarkable focus. "Maria Elena," he said after a long moment, "after my grandmother. She also had the gift of hearing things others couldn't." Eleanor wrote it on the chart, smiling. "Maria Elena Yazzie. It suits her." "They haven't approved me yet," Miguel reminded her, his voice betraying his worry. "They will," Eleanor replied, with the confidence of someone who had seen enough of life to recognize inevitability. The following day, Diane Matthews arranged for Miguel to meet with a tribal social services representative. Sarah Blackhawk was a stern-looking woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun. She studied Miguel over reading glasses as they sat in the hospital cafeteria. "You understand this won't be easy," she stated, tapping his application with one finger. "Single men rarely get priority in adoption cases, especially for female infants." "I'm not looking for easy," Miguel replied. "I'm looking for right." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her eyes. "Tell me why you want this child." Miguel weighed his words carefully. "When I found her, thrown away like garbage because she was born different, I recognized something. My people have been treated as disposable too, cast aside because we don't fit someone else's idea of perfect." He met Sarah's gaze directly. "Maria Elena deserves to grow up somewhere her differences are honored, not hidden, where she'll learn that her worth isn't measured by how closely she matches others' expectations." Sarah wrote something in her notebook. "Your mother lives with you?" "Yes, in my family home on the reservation. She's 73, with the energy of someone half her age. She raised me alone after my father died, then helped with my nephew when my sister couldn't." "And your work?" "Construction. 6 years with Horizon Builders, Before that, 10 years with Southwest Development. I have health insurance, a 401k and some savings. The questioning continued for over an hour, Sarah probing every aspect of Miguel's life with methodical thoroughness. As they concluded, she closed her notebook and removed her glasses. The tribe will support your application, Mr. Yazzie. The Indian Child Welfare Act gives us some leverage in this case, though not as much as if the child were of verified native descent. Relief flooded through Miguel. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. There's still a long road ahead. Sarah's expression softened slightly, but I believe the child found exactly who she was meant to find. That evening, for the first time since discovering Maria Elena, Miguel was allowed to hold her without tubes or monitoring equipment. A nurse showed him how to support her head and tiny body, then discreetly stepped away, leaving them in a peaceful corner of the pediatric floor. "Hello, little one," he whispered, studying her face as if memorizing every feature. "I'm going to take you home soon." Maria Elena's unusual ears, folded like small seashells against her head, peeked out from beneath the hospital cap. Miguel touched one gently with his fingertip. "These are special, you know. Where we're going, people will understand that." A soft knock interrupted the moment. Dr. Patel entered holding a folder. "Good news, Mr. Yazzie. Maria Elena has been cleared for discharge tomorrow. Ms. Matthews has arranged emergency foster placement pending your home study completion." Miguel tensed. "Foster placement, but I thought—" "With you," Dr. Patel clarified quickly. "Temporary custody while the full adoption process continues. It's unusual, but given the circumstances and the tribal authorities' support." He smiled. "Sometimes the system works the way it should." Later that night, Miguel drove home to prepare for Maria Elena's arrival. The reservation spread out before him, a patchwork of modest homes and trailers nestled against the backdrop of sacred mountains. The land bore the scars of generations of hardship, yet remained stubbornly beautiful, especially in the purple glow of twilight. His mother waited on the porch of their small stucco house, a hand-woven blanket draped over her shoulders despite the lingering heat. Rosa Yazzie had survived boarding schools, poverty, and the loss of her husband and daughter, yet her eyes still sparkled with the resilience that Miguel had inherited. "Is she coming home?" Rosa asked, her voice carrying across the yard. Miguel nodded, a smile breaking across his weathered face. "Tomorrow." Rosa closed her eyes briefly, her lips moving in silent prayer. Then she straightened, suddenly all business. "There's much to do. The crib needs fresh bedding, and I've started making her a welcome blanket." As they entered the house, Miguel noticed that his mother had already transformed his old bedroom into a nursery, complete with a wooden crib that had held 3 generations of Yazzie children. "You knew she would come here," he said, not really a question. Rosa smiled, her wrinkled hands smoothing a colorful quilt. "Some things a grandmother knows before anyone speaks them aloud." The morning sun cast long shadows across the reservation as Miguel drove home with Maria Elena, securely fastened in a car seat donated by the hospital staff. He drove carefully, slower than usual, hyper-aware of every bump and dip in the road. Occasionally, he would glance in the rearview mirror, still amazed by the tiny passenger who had transformed his life in less than a week. The hospital discharge had been surprisingly emotional. Eleanor had hugged him fiercely, slipping him her personal phone number just in case, while other nurses who had cared for Maria Elena stopped by to say goodbye. Even Dr. Patel had seemed momentarily misty-eyed, though he quickly disguised it with clinical instructions about follow-up appointments. As they approached the reservation boundary, Miguel instinctively slowed the truck. "We're home now, little one," he said softly. "This is your land too." News traveled quickly in small communities. By the time Miguel pulled into his driveway, several neighbors had gathered, maintaining a respectful distance but unable to contain their curiosity. Among them stood Thomas Running Bear, the tribal chairman, his presence both a blessing and a statement. Rosa emerged from the house, her silver hair braided and adorned with a ceremonial clip. She walked with purpose toward the truck as Miguel carefully extracted the car seat. "Let me see her," Rosa commanded gently. Miguel tilted the carrier. Maria Elena was awake, her dark eyes wide and alert, taking in the new sights and sounds with remarkable calm. Rosa studied her intensely, her weathered fingers hovering just above the baby's unusual ears. "She has been marked by the spirits," she pronounced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Then, in a lower voice meant only for Miguel, "She is beautiful, my son." Thomas approached next, his normally stern face softening as he peered at the infant. "The council has questions, of course," he said quietly to Miguel, "but those can wait. Today is for welcoming." Inside the house, the modest living room had been prepared for visitors. A small feast of traditional foods covered the kitchen table, Rosa's way of marking significant life events. Throughout the afternoon, a steady stream of community members arrived, each bringing small gifts, handmade booties, a carved wooden rattle, jars of homemade baby food. Not everyone's reaction was entirely positive. Miguel overheard Mrs. Begay, an elderly woman known for her conservative views, whispering to her daughter, "The child is not of our blood. What is Miguel thinking, bringing a white baby here?" Before Miguel could respond, his mother intervened. "Blood is not just what flows in our veins," she told Mrs. Begay firmly. "It is what fills our hearts. This child was abandoned because she was different. Where better for her to grow than among people who understand what that means?" The older woman had no response to that, and shortly afterward, she placed a small medicine pouch next to the other gifts before departing. As evening approached and the last visitors left, exhaustion finally caught up with Miguel. The constant vigilance of hospital visits, followed by preparations for bringing Maria Elena home, had drained him completely. Yet the moment he tried to rest, Maria Elena began to cry. A high, insistent wail, unlike the weak whimpers he had first heard in the landfill. "What's wrong?" he asked frantically, lifting her from the crib. "Are you hungry? Wet?" Rosa watched from the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "She is testing you," she said, "making sure you won't leave her like the others did." Miguel paced the small bedroom, rocking Maria Elena gently. "I'm not going anywhere, little one," he promised. "You're stuck with me now." Day, the first night, was a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and brief moments of sleep snatched between Maria Elena's cries. By dawn, Miguel had developed a newfound respect for parents everywhere. His construction job, with its heavy lifting and long hours in the Arizona heat, suddenly seemed easy by comparison. "I don't know how you did this alone," he told his mother as she prepared breakfast, Maria Elena finally sleeping peacefully in his arms. Rosa cracked an egg into a sizzling pan. "You learn, and you were a much fussier baby than this one." That afternoon, while Maria Elena napped and Rosa sat vigilantly beside the crib, Miguel stepped outside to call his boss. The conversation was brief and difficult. "I need 2 weeks," Miguel explained. "The emergency foster placement came through faster than expected." "2 weeks is a long time, Yazzie," his boss replied gruffly. "We've got the River Valley project starting Monday." "I know, I'm sorry, but nothing. You're a good worker, one of my best. But I can't hold your position with this timeline, not with the contracts we've got pending." Miguel closed his eyes, leaning against the sun-warmed stucco wall of his home. "I understand. Look, call me when your situation stabilizes. Maybe something will open up." The line went dead. Miguel stared at the phone, a complex mix of emotions washing over him. The job had been steady. with decent pay and benefits, critical for Maria Elena's future needs. Yet as he gazed through the window at his mother gently stroking the sleeping baby's cheek, he couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. Later that evening, as the desert cooled and stars emerged in the vast sky, Miguel sat on the porch steps, Maria Elena cradled against his chest. Her tiny fingers had wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength, as if making sure he couldn't slip away unnoticed. "I'm going to tell you a story," he whispered, "about a man who thought his life was set on one path until he heard a cry no one else seemed to hear." Behind him, Rosa stepped quietly onto the porch, listening as her son's deep voice blended with the night sounds of the desert, weaving the beginning of a new family legend. The weeks blurred together as Miguel settled into the relentless rhythm of new fatherhood. Sleep became a luxury, snatched in brief intervals between feedings and diaper changes. The living room floor gradually disappeared beneath a growing collection of baby supplies, formula cans, diapers, soft toys donated by neighbors. His once orderly home now revolved entirely around a 7-pound center of gravity named Maria Elena. By the end of the first month, Miguel had developed an unexpected skill set. He could prepare a bottle with one hand, distinguish between Maria Elena's different cries, and change a diaper in near darkness. Small victories that no construction project had ever provided. "You're a natural," Rosa observed one morning, watching him gently massage baby lotion onto Maria Elena's skin, careful around the bandages where blood had been drawn for various tests. Miguel smiled tiredly. Not natural, just determined. Financial reality, however, was becoming impossible to ignore. His savings were dwindling rapidly, and the reservation's unemployment rate hovered near 30%. Each time he drove into Phoenix for Maria Elena's medical follow-ups, he passed construction sites where he might have been working, each representing income that wasn't filling his rapidly emptying bank account. "We'll manage," Rosa assured him when she caught him studying their budget at the kitchen table, calculator in hand. "We always have." But Miguel knew the expenses would only increase. Dr. Patel had outlined a series of potential surgeries for Maria Elena's ears, not immediately necessary, but recommended as she grew older. The first consultation alone with the specialist in Tucson would cost more than a week's salary from his former job. The adoption process continued moving forward, though at the bureaucratic pace Miguel had come to expect. Diane Matthews visited weekly, her clipboard ever present as she inspected the house and observed Miguel's parenting skills. After each visit, the list of requirements grew. Smoke detectors in every room, child-proof locks on cabinets, a fence around the small garden where Rosa grew herbs. "It's not that we doubt your capabilities," Diane explained after one particularly exhausting inspection, "but the system requires documentation of everything." "The system didn't care when someone left her in a dump to die," Miguel replied, more sharply than intended. Diane's expression softened. "No, it didn't, which is why we're being thorough now." Despite the challenges, there were moments of pure joy. Maria Elena's first real smile, not the reflexive grimaces of a newborn, but a genuine response to Miguel's voice as he sang traditional songs while rocking her. The way her tiny hand would rest against his chest as she fell asleep, trusting him completely. The afternoon, Rosa placed her in the family's traditional cradle board, carefully adjusted to accommodate her unique needs, and the peace that washed over the infant's face. The community's initial wariness gradually transformed into collective guardianship. Thomas Running Bear's wife organized a rotating schedule of home-cooked meals. A retired teacher began a fund for Maria Elena's future education. Even Mrs. Begay, who had initially questioned Miguel's decision, appeared one day with hand-knitted caps specifically designed to keep Maria Elena warm while accommodating her ears without pressure. "Children belong to all of us," she stated simply, refusing Miguel's emotional thanks. One cool evening, as summer transitioned to fall, Miguel sat with Sarah Blackhawk on the porch, reviewing another set of adoption documents, while Rosa bathed Maria Elena inside. "The police investigation is officially closed," Sarah informed him, her usual businesslike tone softened by the news she delivered. "They identified the biological parents through DNA from items left at the scene." Miguel tensed. "And?" "The mother is a 19-year-old college student. The father was her boyfriend, who has since left the state. Neither wants contact or custody." She paused, watching Miguel carefully. "But the maternal grandmother has expressed interest in meeting Maria Elena." The door creaked as Rosa emerged. Maria Elena, wrapped in a fluffy towel, smelling of baby soap and contentment. Miguel reached for his daughter instinctively, cradling her against his shoulder. "What does that mean for the adoption?" he asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. "It doesn't have to change anything," Sarah replied, "but it could mean Maria Elena has more family in her life, more people to love her." Miguel looked down at Maria Elena, now drowsily nuzzling against his neck. The thought of sharing her, even in the smallest way, created a physical ache in his chest. Yet he couldn't deny the reality. Someday, she would have questions that only her birth family could answer. "What would you do?" he asked softly. Sarah considered this, her professional mask slipping momentarily. "I would remember that love isn't divided when shared. It multiplies." The Silver Spoon Cafe in downtown Phoenix seemed an unlikely place for worlds to collide. Miguel sat stiffly in the vinyl booth, his work-roughened hands wrapped around a coffee mug that remained untouched. Across from him, Barbara Whitman clutched her purse on her lap, her perfectly manicured nails tapping an anxious rhythm against the leather. "She's beautiful," Barbara said, her voice wavering as she studied the photograph Miguel had reluctantly handed her. Maria Elena, now 4 months old, gazed at the camera with solemn eyes, her unique ears partially hidden beneath a colorful headband Rosa had made. "She looks like my daughter did at that age." Miguel reclaimed the photo carefully. "She's healthy, growing well." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Two strangers connected only by a child one had abandoned and the other had saved. "I didn't know," Barbara finally said, her eyes glistening. "About the pregnancy, about the abandonment, any of it. My daughter and I, we haven't spoken in months. When the police contacted me..." She trailed off, dabbing her eyes with a pristine handkerchief. "If I had known, this never would have happened." Miguel studied her, this woman from another world. Her tailored suit and carefully styled hair spoke of comfort and privilege that the reservation rarely saw. Yet grief had carved identical lines around both their eyes. "Why does your daughter not want to meet Maria Elena?" he asked, the question that had haunted him since Sarah had made the initial contact. Barbara's shoulders sagged. "She's young, frightened. When the baby was born with..." She gestured vaguely toward her own ears. "Cassandra thought it was a punishment, for getting pregnant, for disappointing me." She looked up, meeting Miguel's gaze directly. She was wrong about all of it. Miguel nodded slowly, understanding flowing between them. Different circumstances, similar fears. "I'm not here to disrupt your adoption," Barbara continued, straightening her spine with visible effort. "But I would like to be part of her life, to know her, perhaps to help with her medical expenses." At the mention of expenses, Miguel's pride bristled. "We manage." "I'm sure you do," Barbara replied carefully. "But ear reconstruction is specialized, expensive, my late husband's insurance." She trailed off, noticing Miguel's expression harden. "I'm not trying to buy my way into her life. I just want to help." The waitress arrived with their food, a club sandwich for Barbara, untouched, a burger for Miguel, growing cold. Neither had any appetite. "I work in real estate," Barbara said after another stretch of silence. "I have a colleague who owns a construction company. They're looking for a site manager for a new development outside Flagstaff." Miguel's eyes narrowed. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," she responded firmly. "It's networking, what people with resources do for each other all the time. Besides, the company needs someone who understands the land and can respectfully coordinate with local tribal concerns." The drive home from Phoenix gave Miguel time to process the meeting. Barbara Whitman was nothing like he had imagined the family who had abandoned Maria Elena. The hate he had carefully nurtured toward them splintered in the face of her genuine remorse and love for a grandchild she had only just discovered. When he arrived home, Rosa was sitting on the porch swing, Maria Elena asleep in her arms. The sight of them, his mother, his daughter, crystallized something in his heart. "She wants to be involved," he said quietly, settling beside them. "Maria Elena's grandmother." Rosa nodded, unsurprised. "And you?" "I don't know," he admitted. "She seems sincere, but she's from another world, and she offered help with medical costs, with a job." "Pride is a luxury sometimes," Rosa observed, gently rocking the sleeping infant. "When I was raising you alone, I refused help too. Thought accepting it would mean I had failed." She glanced at him. "I was wrong. Community isn't just about giving, it's about receiving too." The following day brought another visitor. Eleanor Winters, the nurse who had first received Maria Elena at the hospital, stood on their doorstep, medical bag in hand. "I heard you missed the last checkup in Phoenix," she explained, slightly embarrassed. "I thought maybe I could save you the trip." Miguel invited her in, grateful but confused. "Isn't this against hospital rules?" Eleanor smiled as she prepared to examine Maria Elena. "Probably, but I've been a nurse for 30 years. I'm retiring next month. What are they going to do, fire me?" As Eleanor conducted the exam, she shared news from the hospital. "Dr. Patel asked about you both. He's been in contact with a specialist in California who's pioneering new techniques for microtia reconstruction. Less invasive, better results." Miguel watched as Maria Elena grabbed Eleanor's stethoscope, fascinated by the shiny metal. "California is far. There's a program," Eleanor continued cautiously, "for children with special needs. It covers travel expenses, accommodation. Dr. Patel submitted an application on Maria Elena's behalf." Another offer of help, another decision. That evening, Miguel sat on the floor of the nursery, watching Maria Elena play with a soft rattle. She had begun rolling over recently, her determination evident in the focused expression that transformed her face as she worked to master this new skill. His phone buzzed, a text message from Barbara Whitman. "Interview set for Tuesday if you're interested. No pressure, just an opportunity." Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of drums from the community center where a healing ceremony was underway. The rhythms felt like a counterpoint to his racing thoughts. Maria Elena gurgled happily, rolling onto her back and kicking her legs with enthusiasm. Her small hand reached up, grasping at the air until Miguel offered his finger for her to clutch. "What do you think, little warrior?" he asked softly. "Should we let more people love you? Should we accept help when it's offered?" She responded with a toothless grin that somehow seemed wiser than her few months on Earth would suggest. Later, as stars emerged in the vast desert sky, Miguel made 2 phone calls. The first to Barbara, accepting the interview. The second to Dr. Patel, asking about the California specialist. Rosa found him afterward, sitting on the porch steps, his expression troubled despite his decisions. "You're afraid," she observed, lowering herself to sit beside him, "that if you let others help, they might take her away." Miguel nodded, unable to voice the fear that had haunted him since the day he found Maria Elena. What if they decide she belongs with her biological family after all? With people who have more money, more education? Rosa took his hand, her fingers thin but strong, like desert roots that had weathered countless storms. Some bonds can't be broken by paper or courts. You were the one who heard her cry when no one else did. That connection was written in the stars long before either of you was born. The cool night air carried the scent of sage and pinyon. In the distance, coyotes called to one another across the vast darkness, separate voices joining in harmony, creating something greater than themselves alone. The Flagstaff construction site sprawled across 30 acres of pine-dotted land, the skeleton of what would become a sustainable housing development, rising against the backdrop of the San Francisco peaks. Miguel walked the perimeter, hard hat in place, reviewing blueprints with a small team of workers who now looked to him for direction. 3 months had passed since his interview with North Star Developments. 3 months of early mornings, late evenings, and a steady paycheck that had begun to rebuild his depleted savings. The position utilized both his construction experience and his cultural knowledge, as the development bordered on protected land with significant meaning to local tribes. "We need to adjust the drainage here," Miguel instructed, pointing to a section of the blueprint. "This area floods during monsoon season, and there's a sacred site just beyond the property line that can't be disturbed." The project manager, a woman named Rachel with 20 years of experience and no patience for shortcuts, nodded with approval. "That's why we hired you, Yazzie. You see things we don't." Back at home, Maria Elena was thriving under Rosa's care during his work hours. At 7 months old, she had begun army crawling across the living room floor, leaving a trail of toys in her wake. Her personality emerged more each day, determined, curious, and remarkably calm, except when hungry or tired. Barbara visited every other weekend, gradually becoming Nana B to Maria Elena. The initial awkwardness between her and Miguel had slowly transformed into an unlikely alliance. She brought children's books, educational toys, and occasionally much-needed coffee when she noticed Miguel's exhaustion. "The adoption hearing is next month," she mentioned during one such visit, watching Maria Elena explore a colorful fabric book. "My lawyer friends say it's looking good." Miguel nodded, fatigue evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. Between his new job and the endless paperwork of the adoption process, sleep remained elusive. "You're worried about the medical evaluation," Barbara observed, her realtor's instinct for reading people serving her well. He couldn't deny it. The final obstacle in the adoption was a comprehensive medical review, including recommendations for Maria Elena's ongoing care. The specialist in California had agreed to see them the following week, a consultation that would become part of the adoption record. "What if they say I can't provide what she needs?" The fear escaped before Miguel could contain it. Barbara considered her words carefully. "Then we adjust the plan, together." The "we" still surprised him. Over the months, Barbara had proven herself not as an interloper, but as an unexpected ally. She had never once questioned his parental authority or suggested Maria Elena would be better off elsewhere. Instead, she had used her resources and connections to support them both. The journey to California marked Maria Elena's first time leaving Arizona. Rosa had insisted on accompanying them, armed with traditional medicines and prayers for the specialists who would examine her granddaughter. Dr. Elizabeth Chen's office in San Francisco was a stark contrast to the reservation clinic. All gleaming surfaces, state-of-the-art technology, and panoramic views of the bay. Yet the doctor herself surprised Miguel with her warmth and lack of pretension. "Maria Elena's condition is textbook bilateral microtia with oral atresia," she explained after a thorough examination. Essentially, her outer ears didn't fully develop, and her ear canals are significantly narrowed. "Will she hear?" Miguel asked, the question that had haunted him since learning the medical terminology for Maria Elena's condition. Dr. Chen smiled. "She already does, though not as clearly as you or I. Her inner ears function well. With proper intervention, her hearing can improve substantially." The doctor outlined a series of procedures, not one major surgery, but a staged approach beginning around age 4 and continuing through early adolescence. "The results can be remarkable," she assured them, showing before and after photos of previous patients. "And our team has developed techniques that preserve sensation and minimize scarring." As they discussed the complex medical road ahead, Miguel felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders. The procedures would require multiple trips to California over many years, recovery periods, follow-up care, a daunting prospect for a single father with limited resources. Rosa, who had remained silent throughout most of the consultation, suddenly spoke up. "My granddaughter's ears are sacred the way they are," she stated firmly. "But if these surgeries will help her hear the world more clearly, then we will find a way." Dr. Chen nodded respectfully. Many families feel conflicted about altering a child's natural features. It's important that you know this is ultimately about function, not appearance. Many of our patients choose to delay or forego cosmetic aspects of reconstruction. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Chen handed Miguel a folder containing information about various support programs. "You're not alone in this journey," she said. "There are resources available, financial assistance, parent networks, even temporary housing during treatment periods." Outside the medical center, Barbara waited in her rental car, having given them privacy for the appointment. When she saw their expressions, she asked no questions, simply opened the doors and helped secure Maria Elena's car seat. That evening, in a modest hotel room overlooking the unfamiliar city, Miguel carefully bathed Maria Elena, while Rosa prepared her bedtime bottle. The baby splashed happily, oblivious to the weighty discussions about her future. "She is perfect as she is," Miguel whispered, gently touching the small folds of cartilage where fully formed ears would have been. "But I want to give her every chance." Rosa nodded, understanding the complex emotions warring within her son. "The greatest gift you can give her isn't perfect ears," she said softly. "It's knowing she is loved exactly as she is, while still having access to all this world can offer." The courtroom was smaller than Miguel had expected, more intimate than intimidating. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting warm rectangles on the polished wooden floor. Maria Elena, now 13 months old and dressed in a traditional ribbon dress Rosa had spent weeks creating, sat on his lap, occasionally babbling softly as she played with the beaded necklace her grandmother had placed around her neck that morning, a family heirloom meant to connect her to generations past. "All rise," the clerk announced as Judge Harriet Sandoval entered, her robes flowing behind her. Unlike the stern figure Miguel had anticipated, she smiled warmly at Maria Elena, who responded with a curious tilt of her head. The proceedings moved with unexpected swiftness. Diane Matthews presented her final report, emphasizing Miguel's unwavering dedication despite numerous challenges. Sarah Blackhawk testified on behalf of the Tribal Council, speaking of the community that had embraced a child not born to them, but now inseparably part of their collective heart. When Barbara took the stand, her testimony was brief but powerful. "My daughter made a terrible mistake," she stated, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her eyes. "But that mistake led Maria Elena to exactly where she belongs. To the father who heard her cry when everyone else was deaf to it." Judge Sandoval reviewed the final medical assessments, including Dr. Chen's comprehensive care plan. Miguel held his breath, acutely aware that Maria Elena's future hinged on these moments. "Mr. Yazzie," the judge finally addressed him directly. Would you please stand? Miguel rose, lifting Maria Elena with him. She immediately reached for his beard, a habit that had developed as she began exploring her world with ever-increasing curiosity. In my 20 years on the bench, I've presided over hundreds of adoptions, Judge Sandoval began. Rarely have I seen a case where the rightness of the placement was so abundantly clear. She smiled at Maria Elena, who was now attempting to place her fingers in Miguel's mouth. The court hereby grants the petition for adoption. From this day forward, legally and irrevocably, Maria Elena is your daughter. The small audience, Rosa, Barbara, Eleanor, Thomas Running Bear and his wife, even Mrs. Begay, erupted in applause. Maria Elena, startled by the sudden noise, buried her face against Miguel's neck. "It's okay, little warrior," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "They're just happy because now everyone knows what we've always known, that you're mine and I'm yours." Outside the courthouse, beneath a cloudless Arizona sky, an impromptu celebration formed. Rosa distributed small bags of sacred corn pollen to everyone present, a blessing and welcome for the newest official member of the Yazzie family. Barbara had arranged for a local restaurant to cater lunch at a nearby park, where Maria Elena delighted in the freedom to practice her newly acquired walking skills, wobbling from person to person with determined concentration. "She's talking earlier than most children her age," Eleanor observed, watching as Maria Elena clearly demanded up from Thomas Running Bear, who immediately complied. "Dr. Patel says her language development is exceptional despite the hearing challenges." Miguel nodded, having noticed the same. Maria Elena had already mastered several words in both English and Apache, and had created a personalized sign for each important person in her life. A tug on an imaginary braid for Rosa, a finger tracing her own ear for Miguel, a pretend sip from a teacup for Barbara. "Dr. Chen believes her brain is compensating," he explained, "finding alternative pathways to language." 6 months later, Maria Elena celebrated her second birthday with 2 significant milestones. Her first sentence, "Daddy home now," and her first appointment with an audiologist who specialized in children with microtia. The testing was extensive, involving sound chambers, earphones, and exercises disguised as games. Through it all, Maria Elena demonstrated the patience and focus that had become hallmarks of her personality. "She's extraordinary," the audiologist told Miguel afterward. "Her hearing loss is in the moderate range, but her adaptations are remarkable. She's incredibly attuned to visual cues, facial expressions, and contextual information." Miguel watched through the observation window as Maria Elena carefully stacked blocks with a speech therapist, responding with delight when she successfully followed a whispered instruction. "When does she need to decide?" he asked. "About the reconstructive surgeries." The audiologist smiled. "She doesn't need to decide yet. But you should know, many of our patients with microtia grow up to be grateful for both options, the medical interventions that improved their function, and the parents who made sure they knew they were perfect exactly as they were." That evening, as he tucked Maria Elena into bed, she reached up to touch his face, a nightly ritual that had evolved from her earlier fascination with his beard. Her small fingers traced the contours of his features with such tenderness that his heart constricted. "Story, Daddy," she requested, her voice clear and confident despite the slight muffled quality caused by her condition. Miguel settled into the rocking chair beside her bed. "Once upon a time," he began, "there was a man who thought his heart was complete until he heard a cry that no one else could hear." "I don't want to cover them anymore," Maria Elena declared on the morning of her 5th birthday, removing the colorful headband that partially concealed her unusual ears. She stood before the bathroom mirror in the new house, a modest 3-bedroom that Miguel had purchased the previous year, closer to his work but still on tribal land. Miguel paused in the doorway, watching his daughter's reflection as she turned her head from side to side, examining her profile with the solemn concentration that characterized everything she did. "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "You don't have to decide today." Maria Elena nodded with the certainty that only a 5-year-old could possess. "Ms. Williams says we should be proud of what makes us special." She touched her left ear gently. "These are special. Grandmother says they're my spirit marks." Miguel knelt beside her, their eyes meeting in the mirror. "They are special, just like you." "Some kids will still laugh," she acknowledged, her vocabulary and insight far beyond her years, a combination of her natural intelligence and the years of speech therapy that had helped her overcome her hearing challenges. "Some might," Miguel agreed, never one to shield her from difficult truths. "But the right people won't." She considered this, then nodded again, her decision made. "I'm ready for my party." The small gathering in their backyard was a blend of worlds that would have seemed impossible 5 years earlier. Children from Maria Elena's preschool played alongside children from the reservation. Barbara chatted amicably with Rosa, both grandmothers united in their devotion to the birthday girl. Eleanor, now retired, but still very much part of their lives, helped set out refreshments. She took off her headband, Barbara noted quietly to Miguel, as they watched Maria Elena organize her friends into a circle game, her natural leadership already evident. "That's new." "Her choice," Miguel replied, pride evident in his voice. "She's ready." The party was in full swing when an unexpected visitor arrived. Dr. Chen, in Arizona for a medical conference, had detoured to attend the celebration. She carried a gift wrapped in shimmering paper, adorned with cartoon otters, Maria Elena's current obsession. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, approaching Miguel, "but I happened to be in Phoenix, and I've been following her progress through the audiology reports." "You're always welcome," Miguel assured her, genuinely pleased. "Maria Elena will be thrilled." And indeed, when introduced to the doctor who had been monitoring her case from afar, Maria Elena responded with her characteristic blend of maturity and childlike enthusiasm. "You're the ear doctor," she stated, offering her hand with formal politeness. "Daddy says you help kids hear better." Dr. Chen shook the small hand with equal seriousness. "That's right, and I'm very impressed by how well you're doing." Later, as the afternoon waned and guests began to depart, Dr. Chen and Miguel sat on the porch, watching Maria Elena explain something to her grandmother with animated gestures. "She's extraordinary," the doctor observed. "Her audiogram shows moderate hearing loss, but her language skills are testing above age level." "She works hard," Miguel replied simply. "And she's loved," Dr. Chen added. "That makes all the difference." She hesitated, then continued, "Have you thought more about the surgical options? She's approaching the age when the first procedures are typically performed." Miguel had indeed thought about little else for months. "I want her to have every advantage," he said slowly, "but I also want her to know she doesn't need to be fixed." Dr. Chen nodded, understanding. "It's not about fixing. It's about options. And ultimately, it should be her choice." The conversation was interrupted by Maria Elena herself, breathless from play, but insistent on showing Dr. Chen her latest achievement, a perfect score on a hearing exercise her speech therapist had sent home. "I practice every day," she announced proudly. "That's the spirit," Dr. Chen smiled. "Hard work makes a difference." Maria Elena tilted her head, studying the doctor with that penetrating gaze that sometimes made adults uncomfortable with its perception. "Will operations hurt?" Miguel tensed, but Dr. Chen answered with calm honesty. Yes, a little, but not for long, and there would be special medicine to help. Maria Elena considered this. Would I hear the rain better, and Daddy's songs? Most likely, yes. Then I want to try, someday. She placed her small hand on Miguel's arm. But not yet. I'm still thinking. The next morning, Miguel took a rare day off work. After breakfast, he helped Maria Elena into her favorite turquoise dress and braided her hair in the traditional style Rosa had taught him. "Where are we going?" Maria Elena asked, curious about this unexpected outing. "Somewhere important," Miguel answered. "Somewhere I want to show you." Yeah, the drive was long, and Maria Elena dozed in her car seat, waking only when the smooth highway gave way to a bumpy access road. She peered out the window with growing confusion as the landscape transformed from city to scrubland to what appeared to be a vast expanse of garbage. Miguel parked at the entrance to the landfill. In the years since that fateful June day, the facility had been modernized, with better fencing and security. He signed them in as visitors, explaining to the puzzled attendant that they were there for personal reasons. Taking Maria Elena's hand, he led her to a specific spot near the perimeter. The landscape had changed. New mounds of waste had formed. Old ones had been covered with soil. But Miguel moved with the certainty of someone revisiting a place etched permanently in memory. "This is where I found you," he said simply, stopping at what appeared to be an unremarkable patch of ground. "Right here." Maria Elena looked around, her expression solemn as she processed this information. "In the garbage?" she asked finally, her voice small. Miguel knelt before her. "Yes. Someone left you here, among things they thought had no value." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But they were wrong, so wrong. Because of my ears?" Her hand instinctively rose to touch one. "Perhaps, but their mistake became my blessing." He took both her hands in his. "Every day since then has been a gift, Maria Elena, every moment with you." She looked around again, trying to reconcile this bleak place with her story. Then, with the resilience that never ceased to amaze him, she smiled. "You heard me crying?" "I did. When nobody else could." "That's right." She nodded, satisfied with this explanation. "Because we were meant to be together. That's what grandmother says." Miguel stood, swallowing past the tightness in his throat. "Your grandmother is very wise." As they walked back to the truck, Maria Elena suddenly stopped. She bent down, picked up something from the ground, and held it up triumphantly. A small wildflower, yellow and delicate, had somehow pushed through the harsh soil at the landfill's edge. "Look, Daddy, it's growing here even though it's hard." Miguel smiled, recognizing the perfect metaphor without needing to explain it. "Yes, it is. Beautiful and strong, just like you." Maria Elena carefully tucked the flower behind her ear, her special ear, the one that had once been seen as a flaw, but was now a badge of honor. "Can we go home now?" she asked, slipping her small hand into his much larger one. "Yes," Miguel answered, giving her fingers a gentle squeeze. "Let's go home." As they drove away from the landfill, Maria Elena gazed out the window, watching the piles of discarded things recede in the distance. The past could not be changed, but it had brought them to this present, a present filled with love, support, and the promise of a future where differences were not merely tolerated, but celebrated. Miguel glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror, her profile outlined against the vast Arizona sky. In the places where others had seen imperfection, he had always seen only beauty. And now, at 5 years old, Maria Elena was beginning to see it too. The wildflower remained tucked behind her ear all the way home, a vibrant reminder that sometimes the most precious things emerge from the most unlikely places. And sometimes A single cry in the darkness can change everything if only someone is willing to listen.